Good morning, everyone, and today we're going to continue working with our coordinate planes. And yesterday you guys were practicing plotting points on the coordinate plane, and you had to use the x-axis first and then the y-axis later. Well, today we're going to be reading and interpreting graphs, and what that is going to entail is us taking a look at a graph and reading information out of it. Now, the most important pieces of information are what the labels read on each of the axes. So for example, on the first part of our workbook today, we're going to be dealing with length, and that's in centimeters, and then perimeter, okay? It might also help to read the directions above because that will tell you what the graph is all about. So the perimeter of a square is p centimeters, and the length of each side is s centimeters. A graph of p equals 4s is drawn down here. Okay, and it's not exactly a proportional graph because we see the bottom axis is counting off by 1 and the side axis is counting off by 4. But Math in Focus is making this easy for us to take a look at. So what this means is I have to take a look at the bottom here. And say, for example, I want to ask you the question, well, if the side of a square is 1 centimeter long, what is the perimeter? So in that question, I have to think now, well, the length of one side down here is 1 centimeter long. So I'm going to follow this line up until I see it meet the graph. And the point is so conveniently drawn out for me. And I know that it's going to have a perimeter of 4 centimeters. And that makes sense, right? A square has 4 even sides, or 4 sides that are the same length. So if I have 4 times 1, I'm going to get a perimeter of 4. Now, I can ask the other question as well. If I have a perimeter of 4, what is the length of one of the sides? So I'm going to read on the perimeter side. I'm going to go over to 4, read over to this point, and then, well, if the perimeter is 4, the side must be 1. What I want you to do right now is think about a couple different examples where I'm going to give us the perimeter of the square is 20. So the perimeter of the square is 20. What is the length of one of the sides? Well, if the perimeter is 20, I read at 20. I go over to that point, and then I read down. The length of the side is 5. Now, what if I wanted to do something a little weird here? And I said, hey, what if I said the perimeter is 2? Well, 2 doesn't show up here, but I can think that each of these little tick marks is counting off by 2, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. So the tick mark here is 2, and it hits the line kind of right here in the middle, and it comes down to this tick mark. Well, this counts by 0, 1, 2, so I have to ask myself, and pause this video to think about this for a second, what is each of these tick marks? And right, that tick mark has to be 1/2. So if the perimeter of my square is 2, each side has a length of 1/2. So that will be pretty helpful to you guys as you move through this lesson. If the length of one side is 2 1/2, I can go up and see what the perimeter is going to be. And I'll leave that as something that you guys can think about. In the next example, you guys have to fill in the table at the top. So each bottle contains 2 liters of cooking oil. So one bottle has 2 liters of cooking oil. That was given to you in the problem. Now, if I had 2 bottles, how many liters am I going to have? Math in Focus was nice enough to give me 3 and 6. You guys have to fill in these other points here. The graph is going to look very similar to the one we had on the previous page, where it would just go on this diagonal here, and imagine me drawing it for you. You don't have to draw it on today's Edulastic, but you do have to answer these questions down here. And again, it's going to ask you to think about halves. So read each question carefully, read each label carefully, make sure your answer makes sense. Make sure you're thinking, is it asking me for liters or bottles? So that's what I need to be thinking about very carefully in today's work.